Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
You're gonna forget who I am.
What?
Forget who you are? What are you talking about?
It's okay. I'm gonna come and find you, and I'll explain everything. I'll make you remember me. And it'll be like none of this ever happened. Okay?
Okay, but what if that doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? What if we can't remember you? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
I know, MJ, I know.
There's not something we can do. We can't come up with like a plan or something. You know, there's always something we can do.
There's nothing we can do. But it'll be okay.
You promise?
Yeah, I promise.
All right, Julio. It feels like we're here yet again. And I'm assuming you really like this movie. Like, how can you get so excited, though, when it's not the end? Like, you just know this is just going to continue on.
I mean, for one, I don't need it to be the end to get excited. But also, at the time, as we were watching it, there was a chance that this could be it.
For the Tom Holland one.
Right. For Tom Holland one. Yeah, I mean, they will make Spider-Man movies as long as we're alive and long after we're dead.
Like Batman. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think that it's very likely that it's the end of Spider-Man as part of the MCU, but you never know. You know, I mean, who knows? Like I was so convinced that you would never get Robert Downey Jr. in an MCU movie again, and you know, here we are.
He got his Oscar, and then he was like, "All right,
let's go back to having
more
fun.
money now." Yeah.
I don't need a movie to be the last of anything in order for me to appreciate it. Although I would say if a movie sells itself as the last of something, I definitely want it to be that, right? And going back to the Robert Downey Jr. thing, if you tell a really good story where Iron Man dies at the end, then I want Iron Man to stay dead. So that maybe that's where I draw the line, Alex.
If you're dead, stay dead.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you could say it's the end of a trilogy in the sense that it's the end of Peter's high school years, right? Mm-hmm. And if it was the last Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, I think it's a good ending. It kind of took him, you know, made him an Avenger, and he had like some wild adventures. And then at the end, suddenly he's the Spider-Man from the early comics. And I was like, well, that was interesting. Or it could just be the starting point for a different kind of Spider-Man movie going forward, where he's just like a lot less tech and a lot more, a lot more Raimi, like the Raimi movies, and, you know, just something a little more self-contained. That thing with Sony having the rights, you would think it would be a no-brainer. Yes, please keep him in the MCU because it makes us a lot of money. But at the same time, I think that the thought at Sony was like,
we have to share that money?
Exactly.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's like we could just make our own Spider-Man movies. We don't need the MCU. And so I think it was after Far From Home where there was a friction. There was a lot of like fighting about whether there was going to be another like a third Spider-Man movie, even though that one ends on a cliffhanger. Maybe it was after Homecoming. I don't remember. At some point, after Tom Holland as Spider-Man had been a huge success, Sony decided that maybe they didn't want to share the character anymore. And so there was a lot of, I guess, posturing and negotiations and lines drawn in the sand. And legend goes that Tom Holland was like instrumental on getting Disney and Marvel Studios and Sony on the negotiating table for good and kind of just committing to finishing the story. And so, show business, like I said in the first part. That is just about money, right? I have the rights. I should be making more money with the character, even though Sony doesn't have a good track record with handling the property. This is a studio that has put out Kraven the Hunter, Madam Web, Morbius, right? Like, why the fuck would you give him Spider-Man to just be on their own? They could knock it out of the park. Who knows? In the end, it's just the talent, right? Sony also did Across the Spider or Into the Spider-Verse. So it's not like they don't know what they're doing all the time. But like for fans and people that were watching from the outside, we're like, just please let the people from Marvel do what they want with the character and just be happy that you're getting whatever percentage of the earnings you're getting. What happens next? I don't know. Nobody knows. All we know is that it's been announced that Spider-Man 4 is going to happen and Tom Holland is going to be in it. What else happens after that? No idea. But No Way Home certainly feels like a movie that, through Doctor Strange's magic, performs the trick of getting Peter Parker out of the MCU, right? Everybody forgets who he is, and he's no longer an Avenger. So you could make Spider-Man 4 and you don't ever have to reference anybody else in the Marvel Universe. Does that mean that you also never have to reference Zendaya and Jacob Battalion? I think that would be a shame, but who knows? Is Jonah Jameson still going to be a character? Are they bringing J.K. Simmons back? I don't know. All they know is that Tom Holland's going to be in it.
But this isn't too gimmick heavy for you.
No, I guess it could be if I wasn't.
Where was Kirsten Dunst?
I guess she didn't want to come back. Look, the biggest, if you like sit down to break down the logic of the script, which I don't, because I think that it's magic. So really, I think that everybody, including
that's
Doctor
actually
Strange,
perfect how they keep going back to it. They're like, magic exists here, and like, because they're all confused.
Yeah,
that's like an easy way to remind your audience, where's all that music coming from, and who's providing that alcohol? It doesn't matter, Marge. It's a party.
Yeah, but it's true, because like, I know it would bother me more if I liked the movie less, but Elektra doesn't know that Peter's Spider-Man, and even if you were to say, well, this Electro does. No, he doesn't, because at the end of the movie, he says, I was hoping Spider-Man was black.
Yeah.
So what I have to do, like my headcanon is, it's not the people that knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, it's the people that had a very specific type of connection to Spider-Man. It just happens that most of them know that he's Spider-Man, maybe because that's one of the reasons why the connection is so strong, right? Anybody that gets too close to Spider-Man to develop this type of connection, well, odds are that they're going to figure out or they're going to learn that Peter's Spider-Man. So it doesn't bother me. It's magic. Doctor Strange was casting a spell and then he kind of made the best guess as far as like what was happening. I was saying these words and then these people started showing up. So it must be related to the words I was saying. It's magic. I've seen people trying to figure out what it means, that nobody remembers Peter Parker. They're like, so nobody knows like his name? Like there's no records of him existing? Does he have a social security number? I'm like, what are you? It doesn't matter. It's magic. So the main thing is Doctor Strange said, everybody's going to forget you. And they did. And the world kind of like arranges itself around that. Like some people would be like, well, what about Flash's book? What about Flashpoint? Does the book not exist anymore? I don't know. Maybe that's in a different version. Maybe it's just Flash writing about Spider-Man, or maybe he never wrote a book. It doesn't matter, because whatever is happening in the universe, magic made it happen. So why didn't Mary Jane show up? I don't know, because the spell didn't apply to her. maybe the spell only applied to people with superpowers.
It's magic.
Did it work?
No. You changed my spell 6 times.
5 times.
You changed my spell. You don't do that. I told you, and that is why.
93% on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe, is the score that this holds.
Yeah, 95 on the popcorn meter, I think.
A towering juggernaut-like box office return of $1.953 billion, making it the 6th highest grossing film of all time. Before we went on the air, we were reviewing some of these, and I kindly reminded Julio that one man has 3 of the top 5 grossing movies of all time.
I kindly reminded Alex that man couldn't get a Spider-Man movie done. He got tired of trying to untangle the rights at the time. He was like, I don't care. I'm just going to make a movie about blue people.
According to this list, Avatar's still number 1, and that might have been pushed over the top. I think they did a re-release a few years ago. So anyway, I mentioned 93%. So Julio, who didn't like this?
There are a few
In
people.
addition to some of my friends, the reviews for folks I follow on Letterboxd were ranging for this movie.
I think that this movie lives or dies. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But my assumption is always, if you're not particularly interested in the Spider-Man character, this is 100% not for you. It's just like, why would you watch it?
Or if you don't want to watch a movie that's 2.5 hours long that just tells you the whole time or asks you the whole time, hey, remember this movie? Hey, remember this movie?
But if it's reminding you of movies that you like, you're like, oh yeah, that's right.
Mixed bag, brother.
Or even movies that you wish you liked. You're like, all right, I'll give it a second chance. All right, my guess is none of these people are Spider-Man fans, but who knows? Maybe they are, and they had bones to pick, specific bones to pick. Rafer Guzman from Newsday says, short on story, long on insider humor, this Spidey entry marks a sudden drop-off in quality. Insider humor, I mean, that is one way of saying it. Nobody wants to be on the outside looking in. You know, if you're sitting through a Spider-Man movie and you feel like there's a lot of jokes that are going over your head because you're not part of the clique,
yeah,
I can see how that makes you leave the screening, get on your computer, and send Newsday a bad review. I'll give it a green splotch. Drew Dish from Giant Freaking Robot says, Spider-Man No Way Home feels like the worst kind of comic book storytelling. It only exists to heap fan service upon the viewer and create a new foundation to build upon.
I didn't see that new foundation anywhere.
So there's a foundation for the next Spider-Man movie where he's not an Avenger. He's single, ready to mingle. Bring the new Rhino. Next, Chris Hewitt from Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, it's called Spider-Man No Way Home, but a better title for this exhausting sequel would be Spider-Man for super fans only. How about Spider-Man for only fans?
Well, hold on now.
Who's the sexy Spider-Man? Is it just Tobey Maguire with the daddy energy?
I guess so, yeah. Probably at this point. Andrew Garfield, credit to him, didn't really age much between this and his 2 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, he's frozen in time. That dude, it's just, I guess Tom Holland doesn't really age. He might at some point just hit puberty and we'll
He's
see.
28.
Right? But he looks like a kid.
He does.
It's impressive. Next, Kyle Smith from National Review says, it's all dumb gimmicks, sci-fi gobbledygook, and digital spectacle, and the central love story is such an afterthought that the young couple, Tom Holland and Zendaya, barely spend any time together. I think this is the most time they've spent together in a Spider-Man movie.
I agree with the first part of that.
Gobbledygook. And finally, Andrew Kendall from Staybrook News says, yet again, Spider-Man's wants and needs are deferred for villains that were created by someone else. It is as if he's a medium that's shown up at the wrong sons, left to exorcise ghosts of someone else's past. I mean, but his wants and needs are always deferred for someone else's. That's the Spider-Man character. That's the story of Spider-Man, is that he's always putting what he wants aside so that he can sacrifice. Like that's one of his characteristics. He's constantly sacrificing his own happiness, his own movie.
It's so meta.
I mean, it is. He's so generous. He let Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come and like air out their grievances and heal. No, the 3 of them healed each other. That was the last quote, Alex. a little bit more about my theater experience because you asked in Contreras Corner. And
Did you see it opening weekend, that Christmas season?
I think I did. I definitely saw it in December because it was one of those things where I was really hoping I wouldn't get spoiled. And I wasn't going to movies, so I wasn't afraid that a trailer was going to spoil the movie for me on my way, before it opened. But then once it opened, especially working at that website I was working at, I was like, it's going to happen. And my friends were telling me, yeah, you need to go see it because you're going to hate it if somebody tells you what happens.
Yeah.
And one of my friends suggested it because I was like, I don't want to do it, dude. It's still, we're in Texas. I don't want to risk getting into a movie theater with a bunch of people that may or may not be vaccinated and may or may not be wearing masks. And my friend said, well, do what I did. He lives in Spain. Go to a theater that is one of those boutique theaters, like the really fancy ones that only have a handful of seats per auditorium. And they're usually pretty far apart. There has to be one of those where you live. And I was like, son of a bitch, there is. I never think about it, but do you know the iPick?
Yeah, this is starting to come back to me. I kind of remember you telling me about this.
I probably did because
Yeah.
I was like, man, life hack. You want to watch a movie? Go to the iPick. I only went that once. I mean, I've been there a couple of times since, but I'd been there once already, and that's how I knew the layout. I was like, that's right. That's a theater that is just, you're sitting on couches. And it's like, it's just you and your date. And then there's literally, you're kind of like walled off from everybody else. And so there might be like 20 units or so like that. So you're talking about like 40 people maximum. It's all spaced out. Of course, it's pricey. It's more expensive. It's probably twice what you would pay for a ticket. And then, there's food and it's all a lot more expensive. But in this case, I was like, well, I'll take it. It solves my problem for the most part. It's a long drive because up north and, I live on the south. But that's how we fixed it. We were like, we're going to buy tickets. And I was honestly surprised that we got tickets, that there were still tickets available when we decided to pull the trigger on it. But I think we went on a Sunday night and it went off without a hitch. We're pretty happy. And of course, Kelly, because you were asking me if anybody had cheered. And I don't remember. I don't think so. She says that when Andrew Garfield came through the portal, she just like instantly looked at me to see my reaction. I was just smiling, which is something that, I do when I'm happy. I smile while watching a movie. I went into it, and I've mentioned this before, and I told you to keep that in mind at the end of last episode. It was not confirmed. Nothing was confirmed. It was just all rumors. And poor Andrew Garfield was the one that I think was getting the brunt of the questions and having to lie to people in interviews.
No, I'm not in the film. I love Spider-Man. I always have. I was so happy to have played the part. And I'm so excited to see what they do with the third one, just like you guys are, to be honest. Okay. No, that's not like a diplomatic answer. Yeah. Like, I really, really mean it. Like, I love Tom Holland, I love John Watts, I love Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige and what they've done with those movies and that character, because it's, it's an important character to me. So I'm just really excited to see what happens in the third one, as you guys are, I can see as well.
Well done, Andrew.
So yeah, I'm sitting there, and I don't know, right? The trailer had already spoiled that Alfred Molina's there, and I think I knew Willem Dafoe was going to be there, but there was nothing about the two Spider-Man. So really, the moment he opens the portal and you see a figure, you're like, it has to be this. If this is not when it happens, then it's just not happening. And yeah, Andrew Garfield walks in, and then you're like, well, they got Garfield. There's a 50-50 chance that they also got Tobey Maguire. They could have just gotten Garfield. Who knows? And then thankfully, they don't make you wait too long. He comes in, I don't know, 5 minutes later. Yeah, it was very satisfying. I mean, watching it, I was very aware that there was no way that I could be objective about the movie. I was just like, I'm having a good time, but I was always going to have a good time. Like, they would have to do something really bad with the idea of getting the three Spider-Men together and the villains from their movies together and just having them, do stuff. I was like, you have to really fuck it up for me to walk away from this being dissatisfied. And honestly, I haven't watched the movie since. So this is the first time that I've rewatched it. And I was very curious about how it was going to play, if it was just going to still work, if the callbacks and the references and the constant like elbowing, I was like, hey, look, it's this thing and it's this guy and it's that line. If that was going to get on my nerves, because I knew that it had gotten on some people's nerves. I mentioned it. I think it was in a warm up, maybe. I don't know, that I gotta try to stay away from most of the online discourse, because at this point it kind of gets in the way of me experiencing movies. Like, I'm happy to have a conversation with people, but reading or hearing people bitch about something that's not constructive, it kind of gets in the way. But still, when it's something this big, it's usually you can't escape it. And so the people that didn't like this movie were very loud about it. So I was very aware of, oh, really? You didn't like the Spider-Man references? Oh, you thought that the callbacks were too much? Okay. And my gut reaction was like, well, tough shit, because I liked them. But now it's been all these years later. So I was like curious if it was going to bother me, or if it was just gonna find it less amusing. I think I can be more objective now, even while I'm still fully recognizing that I am 100% the target audience for this movie, just like I was a target audience for the previous two movies, and arguably I'm the target audience for most of the MCU movies overall. So they have a leg up on me. Like, they got me, and yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. The emotional moments worked. The callbacks, I mean, they make me laugh for the most part. Some of it, I just kind of roll my eyes, but in a good nature way. Like, they don't irritate me. I'm just like, I can't believe you said that. but it doesn't ruin it for me. And I wish I could remember
I thought you would have hated the Linorama sequence where they're just like all comparing stories. Hold on.
I literally wrote Spider-Man Linorama on my notes.
Oh, me too.
I guess so I wrote it when the Spider-Men are comparing stories. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about when the villains
it's like, well, pause. Let's go back to you in space. And they're like comparing story. I'm like, fucking, we're 2 hours in. Can we just move this along?
There's a part of my brain that is what I said, right? If I didn't care and if I didn't love the character, I think that it would annoy me more. Like, as I'm watching, I'm like very much aware that it is the Linorama approach. This is just like, look, we have them here. Let's just have them riff on the things that happen in their movies and all that stuff. But I find it entertaining, and I am also very aware that this was the only time that we're going to get to do this. It's not happening again.
The constant demasking more so than the Linorama. I was like, what the fuck? Just don't wear your mask.
Well, they have to wear the mask because it's part of the costume. It's just
okay, then don't take it off.
Yeah, but you have to see their beautiful faces too. It doesn't bother me.
Literally more because I'm just like, I understand why they're doing this, is because I think their audiences are so fucking stupid they can't tell these people apart. Like,
I don't think it's that. No, I don't think it's that. I think that you can tell them apart, but there is something very different to seeing something happen to Spider-Man when he's wearing a mask versus Spider-Man when he's not wearing it. You get to see their faces. You get to see them emote in a way that they can't emote when they're wearing a mask. And so,
yes, but much like Terry Kaiser in Friday the 13th Part 7, where he's always wandering into frame, it really at the end seemed like every cut to one of the Spider-Men resulted in them taking their mask off. Like, hey, it's me. I do need to give credit to the part where Tom Holland tells the other two, I'm in the Avengers, and Tobey Maguire goes, the Avengers, that's great. What is that? And Andrew Garfield, is that a band?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a band? Yeah, that was funny. But yeah, Tobey Maguire, his character, his Peter Parker in this is way, way more like outgoing and conversational than he was in the Raimi trilogy. I guess the Venom's still kind of in him because that turned him into a bit of a character.
Well, he's older. That is like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. You're right. Like, he has an age. He looks like he just came out of the set of Amazing Spider-Man 3. But this one, Tobey Maguire looks older, and he does reference that him and Mary Jane figure out a way of making it work, which alludes to it's been some time since the end of the last Sam Raimi movie. So I can believe that I don't think that he's more talkative. I think he's just more chilled. That's why I got the vibe that he was just, he's experienced one. So he's been doing this for longer.
Did him and MJ get married in the third one?
No, he proposes, or he was going to propose, and then everything happens and they get into a big fight. And then at the end of the movie, he goes to look for her and they hold hands again. And it's kind of like, oh, she's going to forgive him. But that was the end of it.
I need to rewatch those 3 over the next week or so, and then I'll be able to rank all of these. You sometimes tell me that 3 is not as bad as I remember it.
It has moments. It has some good moments. It has some really bad stuff. Yes, there's some shit that's just so campy. Do you remember this is a meme too. Do you remember James Franco eating the pie?
Yes.
Like that's from Spider-Man 3.
And then I had the momentary thought watching this is like, is Harry going to be in this? I was like, oh, wait, nope.
Do you have a best friend too?
I did.
You did?
He died in my arms after he tried to kill me.
The sequence or moment we called out at the very end of Contrarian's Corner where they reenact visually the death of Gwen Stacy and Andrew Garfield saves Zendaya,
Yeah.
Zendaya, okay. I like her too. I like her as MJ, and I like that's the only thing I've seen her in. But the brief clips I've seen of her as like a person, like interviews and stuff, I dig her vibe. And yes, the Gwen Stacy thing when he catches her and then they make it to the ground and he asks if she's okay and she says yes and he starts crying. That was so good that like ever so briefly I started like tricking myself into thinking The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was good because
it set it up.
It resulted in a moment that was the best part of an okay movie, but like a movie that has a lot of good parts to it. That's to me the singular best part of that movie. And it really was, my brain was like, well, hold on, maybe. And then immediately it was like, nope, stop that train of thought right now. But I will give the filmmakers credit for that. And of course, Andrew Garfield, because he's such a fucking great actor. And they took this divisive, to say the least, entry and made it pay off in an homage moment that also didn't reek of gimmick to me. It actually felt like something advancing the story based on something that happened from a previous movie. The whole trauma bonding shit, I was just like, okay, like this just feels like a circle jerk. Like, can we just move this along, please?
I don't care. Marissa Tomei died. Move on.
That was sad.
It's brutal, dude. I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't even have a hint that was going to happen because kind of like I said in Contrarian's Corner, in my mind, the big tragedy was in the past, had already happened. And it's what I said in Far From Home, the Far From Home episode, right? It was almost like I was missing that. I was bummed that we'd never even gotten a flashback to Uncle Ben dying because it was missing that. It was making the Tom Holland Spider-Man miss an element of heart. And that then he finally gets it here. And it almost, I don't know if that's how they planned it or if this was something that they figure out that, the third movie is going to be about him learning with great power comes great responsibility, like really learn it. But it works. It's just so good that when it happens, you realize, you look back at the previous two movies and you're like, oh yeah, he hadn't gone through it yet. He was just a good kid. And then this happens. And then it feels like, oh, now he's Spider-Man. Now it's complete. Like he had everything else, but he was missing that big guilt.
The tragedy.
Not just a tragedy, but a tragedy that he feels responsible for. So that's what happens. And then you can tell like that. I mean, partly it's because he's beaten down and bloody and whatever, but Tom Holland looks older. It just like the transformation is complete in that last part of the movie, and I enjoyed it a lot.
You were referencing the previous two. This movie to me just makes Far From Home even more pointless. There's like nothing besides the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal frames him for murder or frames him for the drone attack and reveals his identity. There's none of the fucking Eternals or Elementals. Okay. There's none of that here. And there's not even like references to what happened in the second one.
It was good times, man. It was just a chill adventure that then kind of heightens. See, you say that this movie heightens how consequential the previous movie is. I think the previous movie heightens how significant this movie is. Tomato.
Sure. No, that one sucks. There's no way around it. I'm watching this and having spent a lot of time with Peter Parker in the Spider-Man franchise recently, I can comfortably say that movie is a bag of ass. But here, oh man, it is so gimmicky. It's long. It's really bloated. but I didn't have to take any breaks, you know, and I made it through the end and I was like, huh, I can see for someone like you how this could be, you know, just unadulterated fun and joy. It's predictable, but I guess it's supposed to be almost. Of course, Green Goblin's going to turn bad. And, you know, of course he's going to try to manipulate these other people to help him out. But I guess that's kind of par for the course these days. The Jamie Foxx thing with how cool he looks in this, I'm like, what? we get to see him all jacked with his fucking, you know, like I said, his lines and goatee are just perfect. He's got his hair perfect. His teeth are perfect. He talks cool. And, you know, in his previous installment, that was, he didn't sing his song in this one, Julio. Were you let down by that?
When they introduce him and the soundtrack starts kicking up a little bit, and my thought was, did I forget that he brought his song along from his own universe? But no, it never went there. So no, I was not disappointed because that's one of the most cringy things in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
And we haven't talked much about Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch, who is in this movie because he can bend space and time, you know? The sequence where he chases Peter through the mirror dimension is pretty fucking cool. That would be something cool to see on a big screen, even though that's obviously, you know, the most CG part of it. But that would be where I say something like, this is what you use it for. You don't use it in place of like physical sets. You use it to help you do things that you can't do yet with practical effects and shit like that. Not to say we're ever going to be able to create a mirror dimension, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I don't remember what my thoughts were on him in Endgame or anything, but I do like Benedict Cumberbatch as like a performer. I do like him as Doctor Strange. I like the interactions and the chemistry he has with Tom Holland in this, like how easily annoyed he is by his attitude and, you know, his youth. So when he would show up periodically, I'd kind of like, you know, straighten up in my seat a little bit. I'm like, all right, here we go.
Acting.
It begins with the words.
It's funny because I think we talked about it a little bit in Far From Home, and it applies to an extent here. The complaint from some people that Spider-Man movies, the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies are too dependent on his connection to the MCU. And so they're very Iron Man heavy at first. And then here, kind of like I said in Third Corner, there's no Iron Man, but there's Doctor Strange. And it's still, I think this one is the most Spider-Man movie out of those three, just because, you know, you get three Spider-Man, and it's very, very much about Spider-Man, with Doctor Strange as a supporting character who is there mainly to explain how is it that we get everything together. Why does this happen? Because magic, right? And you need Doctor Strange for magic. But it's also, to go back to a point that I started to make in the Far From Home episode, right? I don't have a problem with this type of movie, this take on Spider-Man, where it's like, let's see how Spider-Man plays in the bigger sandbox of the Marvel universe, because that's what the comics are. Like, the comic books are Spider-Man stories, but every now and then you will open up to see what else is happening in the Marvel universe, and he'll team up with Daredevil, he'll team up with Doctor Strange, he'll team up with the Fantastic Four, whatever. That's part of like reading the comics. And if you want your Spider-Man to be kind of like by himself and just be everything be focused on Spider-Man and supporting cast, there are 5 movies before Tom Holland took over where he does that. And there will be many others after, probably, where he does that. But because at this time, well, definitely at the time that this movie was made, you had like kind of like the perfect storm to make it happen to where, well, what happens when he's interacting with the big guns? It's like, do it now, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to do it later. And you certainly couldn't do it before. So fuck it. Give me Doctor Strange and give me that sequence of him being chased by Doctor Strange and them kind of having one of those Marvel fights that you see in comics, and Spider-Man outsmarts him, and it's awesome.
Hey, Strange! You know what's cooler than magic? Math!
That is what the comic book experience is for me. Like, when you read comics, there was a quote here in Real Talk where like the guy that was like, oh, this is just like the comics, where it's just a lot of fan service, blah, blah, blah. I was like, look, it's like the comics primarily because the comics are like this. It's just adventures and like wild shit happens. and there's callbacks, there's references to other comic books, and there's hints at stuff that might happen down the line, and you're just reading it, and every now and then you'll hit an emotional moment, but you're not necessarily reading for the emotional moment. You're reading to have a good time. And the most memorable stories are going to be the ones that obviously move you and leave you with something, you know, that you're thinking about for days, or that you're telling people about for days. But that doesn't mean that you don't have fun when you're reading the in-between, kind of like what you would call filler issues, you know, when he goes to Europe and beats up on Mysterio. Like, that's also fun. It's, I don't know, man. Sometimes I hear people complain about the Marvel movies, and I just wish I could explain to them that it's okay to not like them, but they have to be open to the idea that the movies are not being made specifically for them. They're being made for the people that read the comics. You know, the movies are being made for, you know, to capture as big an audience as possible, but they are making them, or at least the best ones, I think, are as comic book accurate, as closer as you can be to the comics as they can, you know, without completely losing everybody. And I think that kind of gets lost in the discourse about what the movies look like, or what the plots are. I think that if you like reading comics, if you grew up reading comics, there is a very specific structure and a feel that you get when reading those superhero stories that has been translated and captured in the most successful movies of the MCU. And sometimes it's overlapped with what people want in regular movies, and sometimes it hasn't. But I think comic book readers can take it a little bit more. Like, you know, like we were talking about endings earlier. And yeah, you know, comic books, for the most part, like the long running ones, like they never end. You just like, stories end, but you know that, you know, it all keeps going. And so every time I go see an MCU movie, I'm just like, all right, so, you know, we're telling this story, but I don't know that there's like an end in sight. I know, you know, rationally, I know there's an end in sight because, as I've brought up before, these actors are aging, and at some point they're going to age out of playing the parts. So even more so, like, I'm here along for the ride. Like, let's get the most out of it. But I mean, you know, this is, I don't know that I've ever told the story on the show, but I remember one of my most memorable Christmas Eves was when my parents, one of my presents was just like this big box of comics. I'm pretty sure they were all Spider-Man comics. It must have been like, I don't know, 30, 50. And it was just, and most of them were consecutive. So it was like, basically I could just like binge reading Spider-Man. And that's what I did the rest of Christmas Eve until I fell asleep. I just parked myself on the couch. Yeah, it was, I mean, I remember it still because it was just such a good time. And just like the idea that I have, you know, let's say 30 different stories that I'm going to consume here. And most of them were probably not very deep or even like great, but there was just this kind of like comfort to just following this character and being familiar with you know, the themes and the things that were happening, like the long running plots. I mean, it's definitely what do you call it? Serial storytelling. Like, it's something that I'm very attached to, I guess, from my childhood. And so the MCU taking like 20 something, probably 30 by now movies that kind of go consecutively. Sure, give it to me. And I think that the Spider-Man ones are among the best at capturing the spirit of the comic that they're adapting, that specific comic series. You know, they capture the sense of humor and the core of the character of him being just like a good person that keeps getting in trouble for being a good person. We said not love letter. We said celebration.
Yes.
It's a celebration of Spider-Man in a way that appeals the most to people that are just fully open to celebrating Spider-Man and not really worrying about much more.
And that's fair. This is not a movie I'm going to tell you, like, you're wrong for liking.
What is the equivalent, Alex? What is the equivalent for Alex Mattis? What is the super fan movie that either exists or would exist that where you would be like, because it's not Halloween Ends. I know we've had our disagreements, you know, and that was something that I was thinking about, Alex, actually, because this is on our Patreon channel, but I think it was on the Halloween Ends conversation, you quoted our friend and patron Ben as having said something that resonated with you, and that was where he was irritated that people that had not invested that much in the Halloween franchise were suddenly full of ideas about what a good Halloween movie was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were like, I get it.
Yeah. And if you listen to that episode, I call out in there all the things that I interpreted to be homages to the previous entries in the franchise.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you're right, because it's not, there's some diehards that detest that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure there's Spider-Man fans that also hate this because, you know, they I'm sure they can give you a bunch of reasons. But I guess my feeling, or what took me back to that, was that I found myself thinking along those lines, where I was like, don't tell me, not you, but, you know, the randos online.
Yeah.
I was like, don't tell me what a Spider-Man movie is supposed to be like. I probably have a better idea of what that's supposed to be like than, you know, Joe Schmo that watched, like, I don't know, 5, 10 MCU movies, and suddenly they think that they get a say on what the perfect Spider-Man movie is. It was like, no, dude, you can like them, you can dislike them, but you're not the authority if you don't really have the attachment to the character. We can discuss if it's a good movie or not, but I don't know that we're going to discuss if it's a good Spider-Man movie. And again, not you. I can have conversations and discussions with you all day.
Of course.
But, you know, just the random people that are like, I don't like it.
Yeah, it's an unfair example because it's not a movie that, like, I love and you're ambivalent towards, but, like, the 2011 Muppets is one of those that I think about.
Right.
That, like, you want to talk about a movie that's made for Muppet fans, but also, you know, did its fair share with the general audiences. God, that movie's wonderful. I rewatched Muppets Most Wanted recently, and that's, you know, fantastic as well. But yeah, I'm sure there's one that isn't coming to mind immediately, but I know what you mean.
You gotta do the Friday 13th movie where they bring all the Jasons together.
My God.
Well, I'm in. But if this goes sideways, I'm gonna fry you from the inside out.
I think that No Way Home, or excuse me, Far From Home, is, like, not good. Like, I think it sucks, quite frankly, especially after watching this. Like, I thought it was just, like, not that good, and then I watched this, I was like, man, what the fuck was the point of that movie? So this really boils down to my interest just dipped at too many times. At no point was I bored, like I said. At no point did I feel the need that I had to pause this and go do a lap or some shit. It just never, I never was, like, 100% into it. And I laughed out loud at things. I kind of did, like, you know, like when Alfred Molina showed up and Willem Dafoe, and yeah, just overall. And again, having rewatched Homecoming this week also, and my thoughts on that movie being reaffirmed, dog, that's probably, when this is all said and done and I do my Spider-Man rankings, it's going to go Raimi 1, Raimi 2, and then Homecoming. Like, that's that movie is fantastic, man. And yes, Michael Keaton is a big part of it, because, like, the best scene in that movie, because you were asking me on our Patreon, this is a little teaser for y'all to go over there. Julio was asking me if it was just the Michael Keaton factor. Yep. And it's not just that. There's other things to that movie. It's air of it's very light and very genuinely innocent. Like, there's a lot of fun comedy of him, like, figuring out, because when he bypasses the system with his suit, and he's like, there's those shots of him trying to figure out the web, and the suit talks to him. It's like, you seem very unfamiliar with the targeting system. Like, that shit's funny. But the best scene in that whole movie is when Michael Keaton drops Tom Holland and his girlfriend off at the dance, and he's like, go on in, honey, I have to have the dad talk with him. And then he pulls that gun out of his glove compartment. He just turns around and looks at him. He's like, all right, here's the deal. You saved my daughter's life. You know, and then he tells him, like, just in one tone, he's telling him all this. And he's like, so we're even. You mess with me again, I will kill you and everyone you love. Do you understand me? And he goes, and I just spared your life. So what do you say? And that's better than anything that's in this movie, dude. That scene is so good. I could see that this is one of those things, though, that our bigger discussion in Endgame, it wasn't about me, like, trashing that movie, because I can't remember what I gave it, but I remember thinking that movie was like, like, to the point of, like, I was mad at how, like, good the ending was, because I was like, because it's not the fucking end. that's kind of my stance with this too, is I don't want this to be interpreted as me bashing the movie, because the things I could get worked up about, I don't care, because there's people like you specifically, because you're one of my best friends, but there's plenty of people out there like you that I know watch this and got so much joy from it. So that's fine. That's fine. My beef is not with this movie on its own merit. It's more of just like the idea of, is this going to be the trend now where just we make a few cycles of these movies and then we just bring them all together for one?
I mean, sadly, things kind of got out of hand after this.
Well, whatever the case, my intermittent boredom or, kind of wanting more from what they had here, or the inconsistencies I could point out, I'm not going to say this movie's bad. I'm not going to, it's fine for me. I'm glad I watched it. I got something from it. But this is not a movie, much like I said, Endgame. That movie on its own is not something that's bad. Like, my thoughts that just come through on this are just more of like, is this it? But it's Spider-Man. I know how much that means to you. So I will trash Far From Home, but this one, no, sir.
You said you liked Zendaya's MJ, which I do also. I think she's great. Yeah. In fact, I think I appreciate her performance even more, this time around. And because you usually, a crucial element of a movie when it comes to how I think, will Alex like this or not? It's like the love story. I think that kind of like makes or breaks movies sometimes. I mean, I guess it does it for me too. And I mean, I was fully invested in this one, but I don't know, because you said that she was probably the best thing in Far From Home. And then did you feel like they did her justice in this one? There was that quote I read where they were like, oh, they barely developed the relationship. Because I felt that by the time that they say their goodbyes at the end, I was like, they earned it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know where that was coming from at all. The very beginning of when they, Happy and May find them in the room and he's in his underwear. And she's like, just safe sex. But then she turns around and opens the door again. She's like, oh, you must be MJ. And they get all excited to meet her. Yeah, I mean, the ending, that was like sad. Being a dude and understanding the bonds you can have with the bro, I was more touched by his goodbye to Ned than MJ. But yeah, that review you read, I have no idea what they're talking about. That scene's heartbreaking too, where like genuinely, like the last few minutes of the movie are some of the best, where he goes in and decides not to fulfill his promise, which I assume if we get that fourth one, that's going to be part of it. Yeah, she's excellent in these. And yeah, I don't really know what they're talking about. It's so weird because like, I know Andrew Garfield's and Tobey Maguire's Peter Parkers were both in high school also, but they just seem older. Like, it's probably, like you said, Tom Holland looks like a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more like an air of innocence with him and MJ and Ned. I really like in this trilogy how it's like the trio of them, like the MJ and Peter are into each other romantically, but Ned's there as like the best friend for backup and stuff. I don't know. That's part of the approach to these ones that I really enjoyed. And because Ned is pure, he's not like Harry Osborn, like lurking in the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even though they hint, well, they don't hint at it. I guess it's just a joke. The idea that he could become a supervillain now that he has magic powers.
Yeah, his like the moment of like that's one of the things I would defend of anywhere you can tighten the movie up. There's like that 20-second bit of silence where he's just like reflecting on what he was just told by Tobey Maguire. That was really good. But anyway, yes, to your original point, MJ and Peter in this, they are helping each other and constantly like talking about how much the other means to each other the whole time, that I don't understand kind of what the logic would be behind saying like they buried her character or anything.
Yeah, I think that she's great. And I think one of my favorite shots in the entire span of Spider-Man movies is the end of Spider-Man 2. I know I've talked about this before, probably when we did our endings episode so long ago, which is she knows that Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man now, and they just declare their love for each other, and then something happens, so he has to go. And so he jumps out the window and swings away. She tells him, like, go get him, Tiger, or something. He swings away, And then the last thing we see is a close-up of her as she's watching him go, and she is very conflicted. You can tell that she's very conflicted. Like, she's happy for him, but she's worried, and right. And I've always, anytime anybody complains about Kirsten Dunst in the Spider-Man movies, in some Raimi movies, I always go to that as I'm like, are you kidding me? that is acting.
Yeah.
And Zendaya has a close-up here that's similar in this, as far as like all the emotions that she's conveying, and it's at the end after he said goodbye. He's promised that he's going to go and find her. And then she says, well, even if you don't, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out that you're Spider-Man because I already did it once or whatever. And she's all cocky, like she's been, through the entire trilogy. But then after he leaves and he's no longer looking at her, you can see in her eyes that she doesn't know what's going to happen, and she's afraid. I was like, acting. There you go. She's great.
I love you. I love you. Wait, tell me when you see me again.
And I agree with you. Like, that trio is awesome, and that is something also that gives the movie its own identity because they're all very youthful and they're good friends. I think that's something else. I noticed that there are times where Ned is really dorky, and I was bracing myself for MJ to kind of call him out on it, but instead she just either doesn't say anything or encourages the dorkiness. And I thought that was really cute. And like, yeah, they're friends. Yeah. They're all buddies. So.
A good Ned moment is when Peter accidentally transports that tree into one of the holding cells. He's like, ask Peter, is this like a tree man or like a tree monster?
And then was it the lizard? No, it's Electra. It's Jamie Foxx. It's like, it's just a tree man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, all things considered, Alex, I think that's a good outcome for you. You made it through all the Tom Holland movies, and you didn't hate yourself or the movies by the end. Maybe you hate Far From Home a little bit, but overall...
Hate's a very strong word, but yeah, that's...
Strongly disliked. Jake Gyllenhaal is looking at you like, what the fuck, man? Well, you have to pick on mine.
Honestly, even if I hated both of them, it would have still been outweighed by how much I like Homecoming.
There you go. That's the spirit.
Yeah.
You do your score first, because we already know mine's going to be high.
C+.
What'd you give Far From Home?
A D minus. No. I'm sorry. D minus was Amazing Spider-Man 2. Far From Home, whatever I gave it initially, it's lower now. I know it's 2 stars on my Letterboxd review. I might go back and take that down to 1.5.
Do you remember what that's called, Alex? The opposite of Elizabethtown?
What do we call that?
You're Rise of Skywalkering it.
There you go. So that might get lowered. This will be like a solid 3-star C+. In my heart, this movie is 5 stars as far as like how it makes me feel. And usually that would be just what I put on Letterboxd and what I would just say. It's a 5-star movie. But I think there's that part of my brain that acknowledges that there are some things that could just the Linorama thing. I enjoy it. I am glad it's there because, like I said, there's no other way that it would happen ever. I was like, we're here. Let's just do it. Yeah.
But I think that there's a stronger movie, a slightly stronger version of the movie where it's a little more streamlined. And I mean, I have no interest in thinking about it any more than that. Because I don't want to ruin it for myself. I enjoy it. But here's ultimately boils down to, I think Avengers Endgame is perfect. Avengers Endgame is like 5 stars. Avengers Endgame, like, I think that, yeah, it might work for you, it might not work for you, but again, the general you, not just you, Alex.
Yeah.
But
the royal we.
Yes. But when it comes to me, I was like, I think that movie set out to do everything that, it was really ambitious and I hit every note. And with Spider-Man No Way Home, it's very ambitious and it hits most of the notes. And it's still, So I'm going to give it 4.5, which is what I gave it the first time I watched it. Because it was something, I told you in the back of my mind, I was like, is it just because I am such a big Spider-Man fan that they just got me? And the answer is yes, but also I think it's a good movie. So 4.5 for me, C- for Alex.
C+, sir.
C+ for Alex. So it's overall a good score for Tom Holland and
the crew.
And the crew.
You have a gift. You have power.
And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
So that ends it here on the main feed, but as we've been referencing, it's not over on the Patreon channel. So if you want a little bit more Spider-Man content, just check the Patreon channel. Just go to patreon.com/ControlPrime because the after hours for this episode is going to be a conversation about the death of Gwen Stacy, the comic book version, and also the first few issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, which, as I've been telling Alex, seem to be a big inspiration for the Tom Holland incarnation of Spider-Man. And for the last episode, we did an after hours focusing on Amazing Spider-Man 2, and also we talked a little bit about the first Amazing Spider-Man. So there's a lot of connective tissue that is part of this project. Now, as far as what comes next, Alex, have you checked the spreadsheet? Do you know what's in our future?
I was looking at it the other day, and I have it right here. Okay, yes, I read ahead to something that excited me. This upcoming episode I have no real knowledge of. Anne Had Hun?
Yes, I think, Alex, it's an Indian movie that is not a patron demand from Brenda Curtis or a patron demand from Ryan from Spit and Polish.
Okay.
This is a patron demand from Stu from Sewer Order.
Right on.
Everybody getting on the Indian movie train, apparently. I don't know anything about Anne Hadun and Hadun. How do you read this?
I guess we'll find out when we watch the movie.
Yeah.
Man, it's only 2 hours and 19 minutes. That's you could do a double feature with the Hindi language movies with a movie that short.
And it's super fresh, right? I remember looking at its
100%.
Oh my God. Yeah. 100% 2018. Well, I mean, it's definitely a change of pace. It's no MCU.
Yeah. Bring it.
All right. So that's the next episode. As far as what else is on the Patreon channel, in addition to that comic book centric after hours, we're going to be talking about the movie Space Sweepers as a patron bonus episode. That is a Ryan demand. And then for QVRs, Alex, you still have Worst Person in the World, and I still have Memories of Murder. Gotta crack that criterion and take care of that. That is demanded by Nerd Revert, also known as Jason from I've Seen That. So a lot of cool, exciting stuff on the Patreon channel. Go to patreon.com/ControlPrime if you want to check it out. And now, Alex, let's just up and away web.
Your web comes out of your body?
See, like that's what I mean. Like, that's that conversation, that whole bit about the web, that goes on for way too long. But also, I'm just glad it exists. It's done. They did it. The three people that needed to do it did it, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Fair enough. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of '99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't